I'm Josh Taylor. I'm the Public Information Officer and Communications Manager for the City of Northport, and we're joined now by our Emergency Manager, Mike Ryan.
Thank you very much. It's a privilege to be here. I'm looking forward to another, hopefully not as exciting hurricane season.
Mike is somewhat new to the city. How long have you been here?
I've been here since the end of February, so this would be my first hurricane season with the City of Northport, but come down from Hillsborough County, where I spent the last 8 years. So hurricanes are not an unfamiliar occurrence.
Lots of experience,
yes,
for sure.
Yes.
But we're going to try and make this as succinct and as valuable for folks as possible.
Absolutely.
Not quick, but get bang for our buck here.
Absolutely.
So what is the city currently doing to prepare for hurricane season?
Much like individuals, we are going through our preparedness checklist. Basically what that means is we're making sure that all our supplies are in place, all of our personnel, all our staff are ready in case they need to come back to work. They have their plans in place for what they need to bring, what they need for their families. We're testing our power equipment to make sure everything is up and running, performing as it should, making sure that we have enough supplies on hand, such as fuel, and that everybody's going through the proper training. Everybody's understanding what roles they need to play during a disaster and after the disaster. So we're doing everything that a family and individual would do to prepare, just like anybody else, to be ready for the worst case scenario.
So I think it's important that the community knows that we're getting ready. I'm confident that we'll be ready.
Absolutely, we will be ready.
Yeah. So that's kind of our role.
Yes.
What do individuals need to be doing out there?
What they're looking for from an individual viewpoint is be prepared to be self-sustaining. The general rule has always been for 72 hours. We'd like to push it out, especially with the occurrence of Michael and such of the larger storms, to be prepared for 4 or 5 days. You're looking at making sure you have enough food to carry yourself and your family for 4 or 5 days. A gallon of water per person per day is always a good thing. Have your medications with you. You want to stay in touch, so you want to have a battery-powered radio so you can stay in communications, making sure that you understand what's going on, if there's anything action you need to take, so that if you do lose power, you can maintain communications. Flashlights for when it gets dark. If you have children, bring games, and for yourself, bring something to read, because it might be a while. Yeah,
and I think we've noticed more recently with COVID that people start hoarding some supplies.
Yes,
that
yes.
can certainly happen. So
yes.
Now is a good time to get some of this stuff together.
Now is a good time to go out and get what you need. Now is a good time to do the planning, because you don't want to plan in the middle of a crisis, because eventually you're going to forget something. You don't have kind of checklist to go by. So do it now when there's no stress, and you can go out and take your time and get what you need. You don't have to get everything all at once, so you can kind of separate out the items that you need to get over a period of time. So it's a good thing to start doing it now.
We know that there'll be a tax day coming up.
Absolutely.
Some breaks there too.
Absolutely. So take advantage of those.
Tax week. Maybe it's a whole week.
Is it a whole week?
Yeah. Okay.
And it's one of the things that you really take advantage of. You get some really a lot of good materials for a very, very good price.
So what? For maybe, we have a lot of new residents constantly here in Northport. What can all residents expect leading up to, if a storm is threatening our area, what will that, I know they're all different,
sure.
But what will that kind of be like?
Basically what you're going to see is, of course, watching your local newscast, your favorite newscast, your weather person. They're going to kind of lay out what's going to happen in broad general terms. Kind of give you an idea of what to expect in terms of the storm intensity, in terms of timing, et cetera, et cetera. From the city's viewpoint, what we're going to do is provide additional information, some detailed information. If we're opening evacuation centers, where are those going to be located? We're going to close down any government operations. When is that going to occur? We'll provide you information for non-emergency information. If you want to report a tree down or something going on in your neighborhood, it's not an emergency, but you want to call it in so it can be addressed, we'll provide you with numbers for that. So we'll keep you informed on the details of what's going on, but also let you know what's going to happen, what you can expect.
Yeah, and we're in a much different world these days. The city, not necessarily as reliant on other third parties to get that information out. All of our social media, all of these channels, very powerful tools. Our
Absolutely.
city app, the North Report, you can download that in your app store. It's a great way we can send push notifications. We also have the emergency alert Sarasota County.
Yes.
So, there's plenty of it. You just need to get connected a little bit.
Yes, and one of the things that we always tell our residents is to, a lot of times there's going to be a period of time where we may not have any communications for an extended period of time. It may happen. This is why it's always good to let others know what your plan is. If you have a plan, share it. Let them know where you're going to be, what you plan on doing, so at least they have some idea. So there's not a frantic call. They know you're safe. They know you're okay. You told them ahead of time what you're going to be doing and what they can expect, especially if they lose communications, where you're going to be. So again, planning out ahead of time and letting them know if you do lose communications, this is what we're going to be doing at that time.
That's a good tip.
Yeah.
Evacuation centers.
Yes.
What is that going to be like?
Evacuation centers are not some place that you would make reservations for. In other words, it's going to be very austere. It's going to be very basic. It is, just like the term sounds, it's an evacuation center. This is where we bring people in to get them out of harm's way. That's the sole purpose. It's going to be very austere, very bare bones. There's going to be sheltering and protection from the elements, basic food, water, but not much more than that.
Yeah, so you need to bring some of those items. Don't just show up.
Don't show up and don't plan on making dinner reservations. You're not going to be served anything, and so whatever you could bring with you, just like in your emergency kit, bring that with you.
And it is important. Sarasota County operates those for us. But
yes.
A lot of those locations are here in Northport because we're away from the coast.
Correct. Yes.
And most of them have now, if not all of them, have become pet friendly.
Yes.
And that's a big deal for folks.
Absolutely. And I don't know, for our family, our pets are our family.
Sure.
We treat them just like any other member of the family. We make sure we have their papers, we make sure we have their food, make sure we have a place for them to stay, because they're going to be separate. They're not going to be with the families within the shelter themselves. They're going to be put in another safe area. Just because within the shelter itself, we might have people who might have allergies to pets. So we want to keep them safe, but be prepared to take care of them. Be prepared to go take a look on them every now and then, but be prepared with them just like you would any other member of the family.
Yeah. And in years past, it used to be only certain ones were pet friendly, but now pretty much, and they knew that that was keeping people from going and getting out of harm's way.
Yes,
so.
And we understand that, like I said, pets are a very, very important part, and so we want to make sure that we're accommodating them as well.
As far as COVID's changed a lot of things in our lives, I can imagine in a evacuation center, it's, how do you balance that?
Yeah, one of the things that we've had to do over the last year is kind of provide more spacing between groups. In other words, you come in with a family, you're kind of be generally located with your family, but you'll be a little bit more distance separated from other families. The difference is, a lot of times now there's not a lot of mingling. In other words, you don't see people walking around talking to each other. They kind of stay within their groups just to maintain that social distancing, just to make sure that everybody's safe, staying healthy, but they're out of harm's way. But again, it's a little bit more limited in terms of the actual social interaction.
Lots of options for shelters here in Northport. How do people know where to go?
Basically, what we will do is we will let you know what shelters are open. And as you stated before, we have several options. However, when a storm comes along, that doesn't necessarily mean that all the shelters are open. We will let our residents know what shelters are open, when they are going to open, and when they can report to those shelters. So pay very, very close attention to the shelters that are going to be open, because even though we have shelters available, doesn't necessarily mean that they're all open for every storm.
And again, we'll have a lot of that information. What we've done in Northport is anytime there's an event, whether it's COVID or a storm, we have our alerts page. It's a button that's on our city app, North Report. I'm going to keep plugging that. Or if you just go to cityofnorthport.com/alerts, we'll have all the latest info. We're sitting there 24/7, when these types of events happen, to make sure that that's all in one spot. Everybody can find it every time. It's not some new website.
Yeah, it's a great resource. It's updated real time, so you get the latest information that you need to know.
A lot of people want to know, storm happens, I'm in a shelter, when can I leave?
A lot of times, of course, you're not being held within the shelter, but what we'll do is we'll advise you, or the shelter staff will let you know when it's safe to go back outside. Just because a storm has passed does not necessarily mean that it's safe to venture outdoors, depending on how much damage the storm has done to the area. A lot of times what we'll do, we'll have crews in the area if there's unsafe areas, we'll let you know what those are. Like you might have power downs or roads blocked or flooding. But we will let you know, let the residents of the shelter evacuation center know when it's safe to go back out and venture back to their homes or in their general area.
And I'm sure that we've made this mistake already a couple times in this interview because it's just old habits. Shelter, center,
Yes.
center, shelter. Why? It was a change that was made maybe 2 years ago.
Yes.
Why?
Basically, it's actually more literal in terms of terminology. The evacuation center is literally that. An evacuation center, it's only supposed to be open for 1, 2, maybe 3 days and then go back to its original purpose, as compared to a shelter, which is more long-term for those individuals who cannot return home, maybe to damage or whatever the case may be. Sheltering is more of a long-term. Evacuation center is short-term.
Yeah. So we apologize for
Yes.
just old habits,
Yes.
years and years of reporting and working in government. I mean, it's just
Yes.
it's hard to get over, but we're doing the best we can. Unfortunately, a storm hits our area. You know, various ranges of damage. What can we expect here in Northport?
What we're going to do is we have teams ready. As soon as the storm passes, we have teams strategically located throughout the city that as soon as the storm passes, they go out into the community and they start looking what we call a damage assessment. They start going out through the different neighborhoods, going down the major roadways, the secondary roadways. They start seeing where the damage has occurred, how much damage has occurred, what type of actions will we need to take in terms of how long, if there's a power outage, how long do we think it's going to be. Just kind of getting a big picture of what's going on and making sure that when we relay that information to our community, that we're giving the most accurate information at that time to let them know what areas they can go into, what areas they should stay away from. But we're going to try to make it as safe as possible so that our community can get back to their homes.
And probably the most difficult part with that, we've been fortunate with many storms that we haven't completely lost communication, but it's certainly possible. Cell towers
Yes.
down, internet's out, no power. How
Yes.
would we get the message out? What do you envision there?
A lot of times it's going to be a mix of whatever's working at that time. Sometimes you might have a social media platform up there, or sometimes very barely a cell, sometimes a text. There's always a weather radio that we can do in terms of getting notifications out through the weather service itself. They kind of help us out. There's different ways to try to access different communication types. It's just a matter of what's available for us internally. A lot of times we'll use a ham radio. For when all other communications are gone, we're able to communicate amongst ourselves, and then if need be, do face-to-face communications and let them know, the old-fashioned way.
Yeah, we might even have to go to neighborhoods to post information.
Yes.
Or create a place where people can come physically get more info.
Absolutely.
And I know in some recent storms, cell phone companies have been able to bring in some mobile units.
Yes.
Some more successful than others. In that realm.
Yes, and they're called cows, for lack of a better term. That's what they use, but they will bring them in. We've had pretty good success when they're able to get, but it's also dependent upon where the storm is, how big it is, how much damage it's done, and how much geographical area it has covered, and our accessibility to those units to bring them in.
So I'm gonna put you on the spot here. Cell.
Communications on wheels.
Oh, I didn't even have the first letter right. Okay, great. And I mean, some good news is that Northport, we have our own emergency manager. We have our own
Yes.
operations center that will kind of man in here in City Hall.
Yes.
But we're not alone. How does our relationship work with other nearby agencies?
We work very, very well, especially with the county. We have constant communications between the county emergency operations center, our emergency operations center, and also municipalities also have their emergency operations centers. We're in constant contact before, during, and after the event. What we do is we all like to be on the same page. We all like to know what kind of experiences are going on in other areas outside of us that may impact us, and we also let them know what's going on here that may impact them. We share resources constantly, whether it's before the storm or after the storm. We're constantly communicating, providing equipment and supplies, materials, and personnel to wherever the case may be. understanding that no single jurisdiction can handle this all by themselves. So we have a really good working relationship amongst the cities and amongst the county, and we're constantly sharing information and resources and making sure that we're able to address all of our community needs, no matter where they are.
And I think that's the beauty of being in a municipality and a city, is that you can get some more of this individualized treatment. We have experts who know when the Myakkahatchee gets to a certain level, when we need to start being concerned, what we can do, raise the levees, do some of those things. I mean, I think Northport is in some very good hands when it comes to
We're very
those
fortunate
things.
to have some very, very skilled staff that know their job extremely well and have a history and understand that when they start to see things, they can take proactive. They like to stay ahead of the event. Instead of reacting to the event, they stay a step ahead of the event. So they're in a proactive posture all the time, which is really great benefit for the community itself.
Yeah. Overall, just a reminder we're getting ready, you get ready, be safe.
Absolutely. Be prepared, stay safe, and stay communicating with everybody to let them know what you're going to do, where you're going to be, and how you're going to handle it, and we'll be ready.
Expected to be another pretty active season.
Probably going to be, yes.
It only takes one.
Yes,
All right.
only one.
All right.
Yes.
Thank you, Mike.
Great.
Appreciate
Thank you.
your time.
Appreciate
Thanks
it.
for tuning in, and get ready.